Good morning. That was quite a way to lose a series, and well, this is Ask George, shot at 4 a.m. this morning rather than the usual 9:30, 10 a.m. Morning, George. Afternoon, where you are, rather than evening, where you've been. Did you think we'd be done this soon?
I didn't think that we'd be going until the evening and talking about a glorious English fight back. No, because if anyone's been paying attention, they can see that England aren't very good at batting. They haven't been very good at batting for a very long time, and no one anywhere is surprised that they've been very heavily beaten in this series. Now, the drama of the last day, it's extravagantly bad, but that's sometimes what happens with tipping points in cricket, and this is one of the many series.
Well, on that note, Max Power asks, do you think this could eventually become the catalyst for a much-needed structural change in the Red Bull game?
It must be. I hope so. It must be, though. We have to harness this opportunity to refocus on first-class cricket. I really think that. And we can use it as an opportunity by looking at it the same way we did as 50-over cricket after the 2015 World Cup. We saw how quickly things can change. Now, we don't want to swing from one pathetic extreme to another. Other nations manage to combine focusing on three different formats. Three different formats would be plenty, though, I'd say. And English cricket can surely manage to do that, but it is going to take some humility from people in senior management to reassess and restructure.
It's safe to say, though, as well, that the difference for all the similarities between the Red Ball issues now and the White Ball issues 2015, they're pretty different, aren't they, in terms of the way they went around, or the way they went about the White Ball restructure, by and large, was sort of an on-field philosophy, fearlessness kind of thing, wasn't it? Sort of selection of players. And obviously what we're looking at now is a much more structural, when do you play, what ball do you use? Is it safe to say they're two pretty different sort of things, despite the similarities?
Look, I like all formats of cricket, I really do. But one of the beauties even about T20 cricket, for example, is it's actually quite simple. It's probably the format we played naturally as kids. You try and smash it, you try and bowl as fast as you can, all the rest of it. Whereas Test cricket, the reason that some people think it has more depth is that it's a more complex game and it requires probably more skills because some of those skills are restraints and all sorts of other things which aren't necessarily particularly sexy in other formats. But these things can be, there can be improvements quite quickly, I would think. But yes, we have to look at our priorities. What I mean is that white ball batting improved in quite a simple way by giving people freedom and playing on very flat wickets with a white ball where there was very little deviation. So the skills required to do that, while fantastic, there may be not quite as complex skills as learning the defence, learning all the skills you need to flourish as a test batter in varying conditions. That England white ball team, I don't want to take anything away from that. I've loved watching them and they've nailed it. It's been brilliant. But they became extremely good at murdering even the very best bowling on very flat, very good batting wickets. And that is a different skill. And those are the skills that English cricket has focused on, not quite exclusively, but they have prioritised in the last few years. So I don't think it's beyond the wit of people to come up with a format that is, or a structure that prioritises other formats as well. Look, straight away, you're going to say there mustn't be a window for one competition or any form of the game, because as soon as you do that, you're prioritising it. And pretty simply, equally, there's been an emphasis on white ball skills. And it depends. Do we value Test cricket as a society, as a cricket-loving community enough to change? I don't know. It's the honest answer. I do, but I genuinely don't know whether broadcasters do, whether the administrators in England have the faith in Test cricket to make the difficult decisions that are required.
Joshua Owen asks, do you think the ECB management want Test cricket to continue, or is it a product they find an annoyance which doesn't attract the financial revenue they want? It just feels they don't value it as much as us core fans, he says.
Oh, well, you make a point there. It's a really interesting question. Thank you. So, it does make a lot of money. This is one of the great myths. The bulk of the broadcast deal still comes from Test cricket. So people forget that rather readily. And it's not that the ECB find it annoying and want to get rid of it. They don't hate it. They're not trying to kill it. They just are by result of some of their other actions. But I think what happened is they lost faith in the long-term viability of it as a format. And so they made changes to mitigate against those potential losses in the future. And by doing so, they've accelerated its decline. That's exactly what's happened. I think that they were wrong to lose faith in it, because actually, one of the interesting things about Test cricket in the last 10, 15 years is that actually it's never been more exciting for various reasons, partly because pitches have changed, partly because mentality's changed. You know, people try and sort of hit themselves out of every situation very often, particularly England. That it's been, you know, and the ball's on top slightly more than it was a bit before that. It's been very, very fun. So I still think it could sell. I still think people would enjoy it if they stumbled across it. I think the ECB policy there was wrong. And I honestly think that the ECB in particular hastened the decline of the format. And we are beginning to get towards a tipping point now.
Tom Topley asked, should England entertain formally dividing up red and white ball cricketers to make better tour planning and prevent sort of the, I guess, the knackered multi-format players that we're seeing at the moment, especially, I guess, in this COVID environment?
So firstly, hello to Donald, because Donald's a really good example of the debate that goes on in English cricket. Donald and I disagree on almost everything, and we're genuinely really good friends. I like him enormously. I just think he's wrong on cricket a lot, and he thinks the same about me. But he's a fantastic guy with his heart in the right place, full of good intentions, which shows you can have these debates, disagree heartily, and still be friends. So, it's not as simple as he's suggesting. You know, the players want to play the other formats. There is more cricket than can be easily divided. So, but he has a point. I do think that we should be more prepared to say, okay, their skill is in this format. Johnny Bairstow and Joss Butler, for example, I don't see that they have any business playing any more Test cricket. I really don't. I've thought that for a while about Joss. I've said it many, many times. There's nothing against him. He's a great white ball player. He is not a great Test cricketer. He has had 55 goes, and he has shown that he's not a great Test ball cricketer. So let him, free him up to be the wonderful white ball cricketer he is, and let there be no stigma about that. So, but you know, the schedule is a problem again, in that we have apparently a greedy ECB who sell every moment of space so that there can be another tournament in it. And yes, we're not getting the best out of some of the best players. But it's not easy, because a lot of them want to play all formats, and some of the best players are good enough to be in all sides. But maybe some decisions need to be made there. You know, maybe the England team can get by without Ben Stokes in T20 cricket. I don't know. But is he going to want that? It's the lucrative format, isn't it? Particularly if you want to play on the IPL and things. And he would probably be reluctant to accept that. But there shouldn't be a stigma about being, a one or two format player.
And by extension, Francis asks, would it be better to have separate coaches for Test and white ball cricket?
It's a really good question. And the reason that it's not happening at the moment is the people who went down the road before are the people making the decisions. So Ashley Giles was the white ball coach, and he was very little power, because Andy Flower was the red ball coach, and he had dominance. So Ashley has come to the conclusion, reasonably enough, that it doesn't quite work, because someone will always be in charge. Well, I would say that's his job to be in charge, and he would have to decide what the priorities were. And yes, it could work. I think we're asking far too much of the coaching staff as well. And actually, yes, a gradual move towards specialisation up to a point would be helpful, but you're still going to get the problems with players wanting to play all formats. And I fear, with the money being in the T20 format largely, that you'll see the best players move away from Test cricket. And instead of a team full of, I don't know, Root and Stokes, you'll end up with a teams full of Burns and Hamid. And that's okay. Those skills are valuable. But it's also fun to have the flamboyant skills as well. You know, Test cricket, I say again, is the format that encourages all the skills and all the depths of the game. So yes, in an ideal world, I think that would be the way to go. And yes, I think with a director of cricket really seizing the nettle, I think that is possible. The problem, look, Andy Flower's never a man who found it, at that stage of his career anyway, terribly easy to release players. He wasn't, he was kind of obsessed with his red ball side, as you can understand. And it meant that Ashley Giles was always struggling with the team he had. Am I right in thinking that Graham Swan was rested for the 2013 Champions Trophy final off the top of my head? It's an extraordinary thing if it happened.
James Treadwell certainly
anyway.
played, didn't he? If I
Right,
remember correctly. So very possible.
Yeah. I think he was. I mean, there might have been a doubt about his elbow, I guess. But, it's a pretty extraordinary thing that happened, and it happened quite often. But, yeah, I think we can, I think Ashley Giles probably has some quite difficult decisions to make in the next few weeks, and that's one of them.
From John McComb, he says, why would any English player currently in the Big Bash actually want to play in these last two tests? We've been on the show before of sort of bringing
John,
guys
come on,
in.
you want to play for surely you want to play for England.
You do, but is this going quite ugly?
Well, it doesn't matter. He's still, I would play if they asked me. Jeez.
Do you think
Of course they want to play. Do
you think we might go down that route? Do you think we might see a couple of new faces in the squad for
Well, Saqib Mahmood will play, I think. I've said that for a couple of weeks, haven't I? I don't know. I only think it'll be Saqib. I mean, who the hell? What do you mean, call up James Vince? I've got
James
nothing
Vince
against
out there.
I hear
Sam Billings was
no
at test squad this year, wasn't he?
Yeah, but he's not on standby. The one on standby is Saqib, and he really is, and I think he'll play. I don't know when, but if we finish the end of this series. In terms of the Lions players, it's really hard to get to Australia now, and they've sent them home. So, and let's be honest, who would have made a big difference? The player that I think was unlucky not to be included is Ben Folks. I think he would have made a difference. Would he have changed the result of the series? Well, I don't think so. And also, is he fully fit? I mean, fully fit? I think there is a doubt about that. I know he was on the Lions tour. I think they took a look at his fitness. I'm not sure that he was fully fit. So, I just don't think there are easy, quick solutions. I wish there were. But these are sort of the get-rich-quick schemes of cricket. And getting rich quick, that's the best way to get rich. But it's not really very sensible and achievable. So I'm not sure that just saying pick Billings and Joe Clark and, Saqib, I'm not sure that's really going to make a difference. By and large, I think these are just about the best players, and yet they're not good enough.
Well, that is a question we've got from a few. So Simon R says, is there anyone that could come into the current batting line-up after the series that would genuinely improve the side? And we've got Des Brem as well, who on a similar note says, which openers in the county championship are technically best suited to play in this test team? I think there are some. I think there are guys, aren't there? I mean, it's, as you say, it's whether you think...
Go on. Well, who? I mean, so one of the names I'm hearing on Twitter a lot is Liam Livingston, who I think is a good player. But where's he batting? I mean, he's batting 4, 5, 6, isn't he?
Yeah,
that's not where they've got the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I like Alex Lees. I think English cricket has been, this might be wrong, it's just an inclination I've got the last few years, that a lot of the players we brought in have come in on the back of big individual seasons rather than sort of consistent 40, averaging 38, 40 over a few years, if that makes sense. So someone like Chris Dent, for example, who averaged 40 a fair few years in a row and scored, consistently scored runs for Gloucester. I'm not saying he's necessarily the right guy, but there's certainly a case for...
Sorry to interrupt, but the guys who consistently did that were Sibley and Burns. Burns, I think, scored 1,000 runs 5 years in a row. Absolutely knocked the door down. Sibley did it in a similar way. He's had absolutely prolific. And they earned their opportunities, and they have been kicked out the other side. They have been tried, and this is very harsh, but found wanting by the highest level. Now, they could possibly come again, but they were the best that county cricket had to offer. And I don't see terribly obvious solutions to the problems. No, I don't think that Zach Crawley was picked on potential always, so he is slightly different. Haseeb, I guess having moved on from the guys who scored bucketfuls of runs, they have moved to potential a bit, and that hasn't worked either. In fact, it's worked less well. But I don't think it's really obvious. I don't think how many openers have they tried? How many openers who have played Test cricket playing county cricket?
21. It's 21 partnerships, is that right?
So the idea that there's suddenly someone out there who's going to make it all different, I think, is a bit naive. This is why I think you have to look at structure rather than one or two individuals. Look, I still haven't seen better, if I'm honest, than Sam Robson.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I wouldn't have dropped him, but he's here.
I think Robson had
Stoneman's
such
here.
a good. I think Sam Robson had such a good summer this year. And if we're talking about pitches, for Sam Robson to come out with 1,000+ runs at Lords, albeit 200+ of them at Hove, I think is an exceptional effort. I thought he was very unfortunate not to be in either squad.
Yeah, I don't understand why he doesn't have more supporters. I've always been a Sam Robson fan, but do I think he'd have come out here average 50? No. They're very good, by the way. This Australian attack, it's special to watch, and it has been before. Hazelwood, I think, is even better than the guys who played here. But it is very, very tough place to play. The conditions are difficult. It is hostile. Do you know what? It hasn't even been that hostile this time. I almost think they feel a bit sorry for England. They're not even particularly making fun of us. It's really grim.
Do you think we'll see, despite what you say there, do you think we'll see changes in personnel for West Indies? Does it become a sort of a places up for grabs kind of tour? You mentioned Joe Clark, and Joe Clark's got 18 first-class tons at 25. Is it 25 years of age? I mean, does it become a situation where uncapped guys like him come into the reckoning?
Well, I don't know about Joe Clark. I hope he does, because I think he's a special talent. But it's not like he has made an irrepressible case for himself at first-class level. I think he has a T20 cricket for what it's worth. And he scored, 85 or something on TV here last night. I'm sure it was on TV in the UK as well. And he hit some deeply modest bowling all over the ground. It was fantastic. But this is the thing, that the hand-eye coordination, those sorts of skills are not the same as required here. They're one of the skills, but also you need to have a technique, you need to have a temperament. And, Test cricket tests you in the whole package of ways, which is one of the reasons it's so absorbing. I honestly, I reckon, I don't think this is betraying any confidences, but I reckon right before Ben Duckett, did he make his debut in Bangladesh? I reckon Alistair Cook said to a group of us ahead of that series, he said, this guy's going to play 150 tests. And honestly, at the time, it didn't seem so outlandish. He had scored bucket loads of runs in the season before. He looked like a special talent. I still think people like Ben Duckett. I'm not saying he's necessarily the answer. I can see that on good test wickets that he could prosper. That's part of the thing. No, none of these guys. I think he was opening when he was at Northampton. Where's he batting now? 4, 3?
Yeah, 4.
Why would you want to open in English county cricket? I mean, it's impossibly difficult. So we've got to look at these things. We
saw James Vince drop himself down to 5, didn't we, down at Hampshire? Right,
which is, again, it's understandable. He's their best player. He's captain. He's got a lot of responsibilities. But he is a player he's slightly unusual in that he's got a lot of time to play the ball, hasn't he? You don't see him beaten for pace in the same way you saw Hamid beaten for pace last night. So he's a player. If you picked him, you could improve the side by 5% or so immediately. That is true. But again, let's be honest, he's played 15 or so tests. What's he averaging?
20.
It's not as if these guys... Right, it's not as if these guys have not been tried. They have all tried and failed in most cases. So, again, I just don't think there are these quick fix solutions.
David Jackson asks, he says, the invisible Tom Harrison should be answering how this performance reflects the state's priority of sending a competitive team to Australia.
I just had a little chat with Tom. It will surprise people, bearing in mind the sort of things I write on the way up. But, I actually get on with some of these people okay. I consider Ashley Giles a friend. Tom is not like that. We went for a beer together a couple of weeks ago, and I wish him well. He looked shocked. He looked emotional. Genuinely. He cares. He's not sitting there going, whoa, ha, ha, ha. He's not some arch villain, He's just made lots of mistakes, and I think his priorities are wrong. And maybe he's having a moment of realization right now. You're absolutely right in asking that question. There's no point, looking at the pinatas of the coach and captain, in my view. The guys who are making the big long-term decisions about structure and stuff. Actually, Andrew Strauss made a lot of big calls. Some of them were right, but there was he prioritised white ball cricket, but there was a cost, and it was the red ball game. So you have to decide whether you think that was a good thing or not. Tom Harrison has presided over a lot of these decisions, and yes, I think he is the one who should be speaking to the media, who should be fronting up at the end of these sorts of games, because largely the buck stops with him. He is paid a huge amount of money. He is supposedly going to get this huge bonus. To me, that just seems outrageously unjust. That's not meaning to have a go at him personally, but when you take these big jobs with a big responsibility and big salary, these are the decisions you have to make. And English cricket's in a poor state, I think. It's not just the results. I mean, the barometer of English cricket has long been the Ashes, and that's fine. But equally, if you look at the inclusion issues that English cricket's going through, if you look at the development system, if you look at test results, never lost so many tests in a year. A lot of ways you look at English cricket, and it's a bit of a mess. He's been in position for 7 years. It's on his watch, no?
Spin Bowler asks whether the result would have been any better without all that rotation.
Listen, I don't want to be wise after the event. I've always supported the rest of rotation thing.
Yeah.
Because I think they play too much. And what detail can I go into? I think that sometimes players get to the point where they need to be taken out of the limelight. Remember, I did Jonathan Schott's book, yeah? And I have seen what happens to people who get burned out, I suppose, for want of a better word. So I'm all for that. I think, again, you're sort of blaming the symptom rather than the disease. And rest and rotation is a symptom of playing too much cricket, of the schedule being greedy and self-defeating. So, no, I think if you hadn't had that, players would have probably retired or decided not to come. And they're away a lot. And I think it's good that, people have been saying to me on Twitter this week, why do they prioritise their family life or whatever? Of course they should. I mean, what are you saying? So I've got no issues with the rest of rotation. I do have an issue with the schedule. I think England play too much, and I think it's one of the many reasons that contributes to situations like this. Australia will say they play a lot too, but they don't. How many tests did they play this year?
Was it 4?
So, yeah, I think it was 4. And they cancelled one against Afghanistan here, and they haven't really toured since the dawn of time. So there's all sorts of things they do differently. And I think England's schedule, again, all about short-term financial benefit, is one of the many problems.
Ian Ashworth asks, what are you going to do with the extra time off?
Well, I'm just looking at myself in this little camera here. It would appear that I need a haircut quite urgently. But really, this is one of the world's great cities. It's an incredible place. And I intend to go, when work is finished, drink far too much and make bad decisions. Sound good? That's terrific to me. And I think the team should do that too. I mean, as much as you can. Honestly, I think that they look as if they need to let their hair down. Do I remember Mark Butcher telling a story about when they won here? Was it here? Was it in Melbourne or was it Sydney? I think it was at Melbourne. And basically, they'd already lost the Ashes, so they all went out, got really drunk, played football instead of cricket in training, and then went out and won. There's a balance, you have to be competent and you have to be sober. But at the moment, they don't look, this England group don't look terribly happy. And that's a shame, because I'm sure they'll play better when they're relaxed. It's just towards the end of the World Cup. When England needed to win the last 3 or 4 games, they got themselves into a bit of a mess. And I've been watching them in training throughout. And I went one day to watch them at Edgbaston. Must have been ahead of the India game, mustn't it? And there was a lot of laughter in training. It doesn't mean they weren't taking it seriously. They were, but there's a lot of laughter and relaxation. And I actually knew then they'd be okay. Genuinely. I think that there's a balance, and that these guys have got themselves in a bit of a rut. I think it probably will mean a bit of I think there probably will be a change in the guard. And I don't suppose we will see some of these players play Test cricket again. And maybe there are scars on some of them. But there's a balance, isn't there, between relaxation and focus. And actually, I often think they come together, work hard, play hard, and I don't think they're doing either particularly effectively right now. It's a weird environment, with COVID around. They can't really go out. They're losing.
It's a lot of work hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a pretty miserable tour in many ways. We're terribly lucky to come here, and we don't have the same sort of difficulties that they have. But it's not the Ashes tours that used to be. And again, this is why I don't want to be too harsh on the players. They've come and they've been found wanting. That's absolutely true. But I do think, again and again, we've got to look at the structure, the system, and not particularly individuals. I don't think there's any coach, any captain in the world that would have made a difference in this series. And I actually don't think that you could pick 2 or 3 different people from county cricket, whoever you're thinking, really. I don't think it would have changed the results. I think there's a chasm between Australian cricket and English cricket, and that's pretty hard to stomach.